Armored Core 3 was an interesting entry. It certainly doesn't do much when it comes to pushing the series into new grounds, but it sufficiently provides improvements and enhancements of certain elements to enrich the presentation, like the fully voice-acted briefings, the increase in visual fidelity, so on and so forth. To me, what fascinates me about this approach and the pattern I've noticed with FromSoft in the series up to this point is their commitment to iterative design over innovation. If you've noticed from Gen 1 to Gen 3, this series has always focused on building on top of itself while readjusting some gameplay mechanics and adding quality of life features to provide something fresh, and in the case of Armored Core 3, this is no different. This entry and Silent Line feel like the perfect tipping point in which FromSoft really started getting more experimental and creative with the way they tackle originality regarding content while also sticking to the same formula. It's not a night and day difference, of course, but if we're to take the mission design, the customization, the presentation, and anything else that stimulates your audiovisual senses, we have right here what is, with no shadow of a doubt, one of my favorite entries in the series so far, and I'm keenly excited to talk about it with you all. This entry is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity currently resides in underground cities after the break of a nuclear war on the surface. Those who survived established a society named Layered, currently at the hands of the Controller, an artificial intelligence who oversees and dictates every minor and major aspects of common daily life to the general populace. As per tradition, three corporations, Mirage, Crest Industries, and Kisaragi, all fight for a place at the top of controlling the many assets and properties within Layered, while all remaining under the Controller. And during the in-game events, the Controller seems to be experiencing rare malfunctions, thus subsequently kicking into gear a rebellion uprising known as Union to dismantle it. This entry marks the beginning of a new timeline continuity, ditching the established lore set up from the PS1 entries up to AC2 Another Age, while still keeping the common tropes and elements the series is known for. the dystopian setting, corporate rivalry, and of course our dearly beloved Ravens, as they still operate in the same function as they used to in the past. I'm curious as to why the sudden shift, because there's no real indication of the need to soft reboot the narrative, but considering the events of another age, I feel they either wrote themselves into a corner or did everything they wanted to do with that timeline and hit a reset that would continue to go on up until Last Raven. The immediate thing that stood out from this is that the narrative felt much grimmer, at least in terms of presentation and mood, because looking at the past, most of the emphasis was placed on the corporations and how the competition led to a messier situation for all parties involved. This time, they introduced the human element that helps ground it a little more, where you see workers just giving a few lines of dialogue about their situation. Or the general discussion of how the controller is really having an effect on people through the mails. This approach does something that naturally implements another layer of emotion that you can connect with, and while this has somewhat been the standard for the arena and the other pilots' descriptions, having it be intertwined with the plot itself goes a long way for believability. I also loved the visual presentation this time around. There hasn't been much of a leap or significant push in graphical fidelity, and not that it needed to in the first place, to be honest, as most of the assets from AC2 were already optimized and ready to use with their engine, I'm certain. But this time around, the scenery feels more industrial and grimy. This is no different from previous entries, but the color grading plays a big role in exalting that feeling of pessimism you get from the environment. You go from rainy and swampy rainforests where your field of view is heavily obfuscated by the weather, a smelting factory where the overbearing heat is your second enemy, or the sinking ship that is nose-deep frozen in the cold Antarctic weather. The feeling that I get from these sceneries is one of oppression, where you don't feel comfortable being surrounded in, and you're only here to complete the tasks as you're told. There's also been a boost in sound design from what I've noticed in some particular areas, like weapons feeling more punchy or overboost sounding more aggressive, but other than that, it's not significant to the point where it's entirely different from AC2. Through the beauty of iterative design, we mostly see the unchanged core formula return, more specifically the game loop of going through missions, customizing your AC, and occasionally going through the arena should you want to. But this time around, there are new game mechanics and quality of life features that really put 3 above past entries. One of those new mechanics are consorts, companions that will aid you in select missions. Throughout the game, as you complete missions and rise through the ranks, new pilots graduate from MTs to ACs, and once doing so, you'll receive mail from them expressing their excitement and desire to work with you. And as you scroll through the list of consorts available, each one has their own unique quirk and stats, and it's up to you to pick the best person for the job. And let me tell you, this simple inclusion adds so much to the immersion, it's actually ridiculous how empowered they can make you feel at points. What's even better is that not only is their AI excellent, but just in terms of presentation, they also contribute to a more involved and collaborative experience, in the sense that being in the battlefield with more combatants gives this feeling of camaraderie and cooperation, which further elevated the experience for me. Of course, if you'd like to, you don't need them, and you can go Rambo if you're confident enough. But be warned that sometimes going on missions without one can significantly impact the difficulty of a mission, not specifically in terms of scaling, but in management and situation awareness, as sometimes you'll be thrown into missions where you're facing multiple enemies from multiple directions, and if you don't have the means to manage yourself in the moment, you'll be in a pickle. Alongside the consorts, a new core function has been introduced on top of the overboost that was brought in AC2, called Exceed Boost, and as a mechanic, it complements extremely well with the existing systems. You have what is essentially floating orbits that come out of your AC shoulders, and they both autonomously shoot back without much input required. They vary in ammo types, but the best one is the energy version that is the equivalent of a weapon with unlimited ammo, and if you can manage your energy consumption through bunny hopping or any other method, and in turn, it becomes your ace card in dire needs. I made more use of it while playing Silent Line because the economy was really kicking my ass once again, and I didn't want to put myself in a position where I go into debt. but it's one of those things where once you make use of it, it's hard to go back, and it becomes super beneficial in later missions. Another significant introduction I would consider a quality of life feature is that you can now take your overweight ACs to the field, which is pretty significant as it allows you in those rare moments to sacrifice something for something that'll save you in the long run. Not just that, but the more you modify your AC beyond what's considered the initial overweight warning, it will significantly impact important aspects, with the most significant one being mobility, where the weight is just too much to manage. The only downside of it is the horrible buzzing that plays constantly, making it impossible to focus and really killing the incentive to push your AC over the edge for those extra points you need, and I wish there was a setting that allowed you to turn it off. Wrapped in all of this is a new ranking system that rewards your performance during missions, from damage received to the amount of ammunition used, with a score attributed at the end, and some parts that are either exclusive to higher tiers or you'll unlock them in a shop for purchase. I'll be completely honest and say that I never really felt the impact of the scoring system because in games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, the rank system is usually there to incentivize you to perform better during combat or overall level progression, as the audio-visual feedback from the UI and the announcer keeps you on your toes, but here, and similar to Ace Combat, having your score delivered in the end doesn't feel as urgent. And when earning new parts, I'm generally not the type of person who likes to part ways with parts I'm already used to, so being offered anything new that may not benefit my build doesn't push me enough to go out of my way to get S ranks, unless I get them accidentally, but at that point that is simply a me thing, which may differ for many other people. If you've been noticing, as we move up with each mainline game, so does the amount of freedom offered by the game systems, and when it comes to player customization, the push for more player options and how they want us to deck out our ACs become almost like a regulatory pillar that receives the utmost attention, which is why you go from AC1, where you can hold a main weapon and rockets on the back, to now dual wielding and rockets, and it gets even crazier from the few clips that I've seen from AC4 and beyond, but we're leaving those for later. I've been really enjoying this push they were doing with these entries, and it unironically led me to go out of my way and try some of the newer additions other than the ones that I've been used to occasionally, as they're my usual go-tos when I start playing a new entry. The soundtrack is alright. I'm not too crazy about it because I'm generally a bigger fan when the series fully caters towards more electronic soundscapes, but here, that aspect has been much more diminished and there's a mix of orchestral and electronic, which, while a great addition that complements well with the newer tone, the impact they bring compared to the past feels much more neutered, especially when most of these would work well as background tracks you play in the disco when everyone's way too tired to get on the dance floor, like a mood settler to maintain the environment active. I do like the theme though. Tsukasa Saito takes the lead role of composer in this project, alongside newcomer Yuki Ichiki, composer and sound director of games such as the Otogi Duology, Enchanted Arms, and later on Lumens. Kota Hoshino this time took a backseat as I think he was simply busy with other projects, perhaps Lost Kingdoms, the GameCube exclusive that also came out at the same time as AC3, or maybe something else, but he still contributed a few tracks for this project, which is always good seeing him. While this isn't a soundtrack I would personally listen to frequently, here are some highlights of the ones I enjoy the most. All in all, I can definitely say that AC3 is so far the big step up that the series has seen presently. But just like AC2, it's nothing too drastic where you can immediately feel its impact during gameplay, but the new quality of life features and additions further streamline the existing formula into something more efficient. Said efficiency brings so far the biggest distinction between Armored Core 3 and its successor, where, while AC3 generally plays safe in terms of content and variety, Silent Line is honestly in a whole other league of its own. Following the final events of AC3, where our Raven once and for all destroys the controller and rises to the surface, what was once a war-ridden land was now filled with nature's embrace, with flowing rivers, greenery stretched out in the distance, and bright solar rays that warmed the lands below. But as we all know, some stuff is just not meant to be in this universe, and the greed harbored by the corporations got them immediately to work in exploiting the surface resources as much as they could, and once again repeat the cycle of violence for power. This plays out following civilization's slow return to the surface, as corporations simultaneously receive funding from a faction named Artificial Intelligence Office, or AIO, and results in them sending out research teams to analyze and evaluate the lands to determine the best conditions for habitation, exploitation, and the like. A certain region of particular interest received the moniker Silent Line, as a select team who set out to explore it got lost when they crossed the border, cutting any sort of contact as well, and it's up to us to unravel the mystery at play. What I love in particular about this narrative is the feeling of a suspenseful thriller it exudes from start to finish. Having the mystery of what the Silent Line is, how it builds up from that premise, and how it ultimately concludes in usual AC fashion has become what I'd consider the critical moment where the quality reaches a certain level previous entries haven't reached yet. Not to imply they're bad, on the contrary, From's insistence on iterative design has allowed them enough leeway to push themselves in areas they feel will benefit the most. And since AC2 Another Age, one of those obvious components is the mission design that already saw a large spike in quality with AC3, and in coming to Silent Line, they really push it into a position where the mission design is what I would dare to say the pinnacle of Gen 3, just absolutely some of the best in the series, and at points it reminded me of Ace Combat 7 and how that game tunneled you through different types of missions as you progressed. Here, you go from missions that require you to infiltrate a base at nighttime as you circumvent the enemy helicopters patrolling the surroundings. One where you have to climb your way up a building and prevent a bombing from occurring with a time limit in place. Another one where you have to guard a rooftop only to be ambushed by two ACs ready to cut you down into pieces. Or my favorite of them all, defending a weapons factory while simultaneously dodging satellite-mounted cannon attacks. The game, in terms of balancing and pacing, has the perfect mix of engaging scenarios, unlockable parts, and diverse mission types, and the amount of multitasking and curveballs thrown your way from start to finish makes this entry one of the most appealing and exciting in a while, and personally my favorite game by far. It's incredible. I think it's safe to say that Armored Core 3 and Silent Line are the entries where you can feel the cogs starting to ramp up in speed, as it starts pushing more in the direction of content quality and smart additions over innovation and the need to stray the series into a path that doesn't really need to steer off course so soon, at least in the moment. And with Armored Core Nexus around the corner, another significant shift awaited the series moving forward. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe and share it with your friends and activate the bell so you can get notifications of my latest video. And thank you for watching.